I'm really excited for you to get to meet Sarah because we have the funnest story around the power of networking and just how small this world actually is. So, if you think you're out there speaking to the void and you aren't building connections, you aren't growing your network, you just never know how small the world is and you never know how connected everyone is. So, with that, let's get into today's episode with Sarah, who is an expert community builder. This is Overwhelmed and Over It, the podcast where parents get to raise their kids, keep their sanity, and build their business. I'm your host, Gabs, and I'm here to help those parents who have two of those never ending jobs at the same time get to be present for the moments that matter and also choose entrepreneurial success for themselves. Every week, you're going to get short, snackable episodes from us that give you the sanity-saving strategies that work in the chaotic reality of raising kids and growing your business at the same time, because the last thing I want for you and for your babies is that you burn yourself out in the process. Let's get to it. I am really excited to introduce you guys to today's guest, Sarah, because when we talk about the power of networking and what a small world this world actually is, I think Sarah and I have the greatest story ever. But also, it was one of those things that the minute you and I got on the phone, you just talked about community and building communities in a way that I had never heard someone do it. And I'm in a ton of them. So it was really powerful for me to hear the other side of what's going on in these communities that I'm in. So, Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself to the Overwhelmed and Over It community?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you for having me. So I'm Sarah. I help businesses and entrepreneurs build thriving communities. I'm an ex-corporate girly, so I have a lot of corporate experience doing it and have really enjoyed sort of the entrepreneurial side of it
I love that. And just before we
so far.
so far, that's right. There's always those ups and downs in the journey, but that's part of the fun. And
Mhm.
just before we started recording, we were chatting about this because we were like kind of deciding where we were going to go with the episode. And I know you've got some timely decisions hanging out. So let's talk about those because I think this is something that comes up in the entrepreneur community all of the time. And I've heard it in rooms where we've paid a lot of money to sit in those rooms and go to conferences. I see it online, and it's that question of, do I ever stop wondering what a full-time job would be like again, or a full-time contract position would be like again? Do
Mhm.
I stay a business owner forever? And so let's talk about what's going on in your world.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, there's a lot of safety that comes along with, or perceived safety that comes along with a corporate gig, right? So you have whatever comes along with it that you feel like maybe isn't a thing in entrepreneurship. So to give you a little bit more background, I was on maternity leave from April 2023 to April 2024 in Canada. Before I was able to return, I was laid off and I was sort of faced with this decision of like, what do I do? And it was really tough, and it's a really tricky job market right now. But I was like, hey, I have this skill set. And I'm seeing more and more often how entrepreneurs, especially with multifaceted businesses, community really makes sense for a lot of them. But they might not know how to do it, or maybe they do it really successfully. And then they're like, now what? Like, what do I do? How do I let them stay? And how to retain members? And those types of questions start to come up. And those are questions that I know that I can answer. So and then of course, with my sister, and we can talk about that later. But she's like, Sarah, do it. You can just do your own thing. And I was like, okay. And I had been freelancing a little bit over my mat leave. So I kind of it's been about 6 months almost since I've been laid off. And now I've had a lot of conversations with my network, and I've been talking a lot with my partner. And now I've been faced with this opportunity to go back to full time work or continue on the path of working for myself and for people that I love and work that I love. I'm not saying I wouldn't love the corporate work, but I just have these two opportunities that I wish I could do both. And I don't think I can. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The reality is there's only one of us. And as much as we want to be able to split ourselves and do different things, that is hard. And I think entrepreneurship adds to that, right? Because it's kind of like the world is your oyster. You
Mhm.
can build as much as you want into it or as little as you want into it. I think that's part of why these, kind of you called it decision paralysis. And I think that's a really fair term is we're always making decisions. I mean, constantly, every day that we open our
Yeah.
eyeballs, we are, from the minute we open our eyes to the minute we close them, we're making decisions on the work we're going to do and how we're going to grow the business and who we're going to talk to today and how we're going to show up and all of these things. And then you add to it this, like you said, a little bit of certainty, potentially a little bit of safety,
Mhm.
and maybe a few less decisions that have to be made kind of gets plopped in front of you. And there is this inkling that's like, ooh, I think I might consider
Mhm.
it. And I've been at this 5 years and I still am looking at job boards. And I don't mean like every day or every week, but like I get the alerts on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'll still check them out. Or I'll have what really always happens for me is like I have an interaction with
Mhm.
a company that I really like. And then I'm like, ooh, I wonder what jobs they have available.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done that too, or I'm to the point where I'm like, "You Sarah, you have to stop applying to jobs if you, like, make a decision. Do you want to go the full-time corporate route again?" Which every time I'm in it, I'm like, "Corporate, man. This corporate BS, can't stand it. Let me get out of here." And then, when you're out of it, you're like, "Oh, I don't know." And then, as a mom, you just have all of these other responsibilities. So everything wrapped into one makes it a really tricky decision. But I've been thinking about it so much, like just every sort of perspective I could think it through. I've done the pros and cons lists, the getting insight from people I trust, and then that can get a little tricky too. But um, it's really tricky, but it all comes down to, what life I want or what I want my life to look like, and that's what I'm trying to stay true to at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good way to think about it though, because I think everyone listening, that answer is different. Whether taking a job or
Mhm.
continuing your entrepreneur journey, first of all, for every single person, that's different. But also, what do you want your life to look like? And I think that's a really powerful question. Whether you're grappling with should you go back to get a job or not, or if you're just grappling with like, should I even start a business or not, or a side hustle or not? The reality is like, what do you want your day to day life to look like? And my dad's actually launching his first business, and I feel much like your sister does in that, like, proud, "I'm here and I could help," moment. But we had to have a similar
Mhm.
conversation of, like, the reality of your full-time job, the reality of what you think you want to be launching, and the timeline at which you think you're going to launch this thing, and then who's gonna support it? How is it gonna be operationalized? Like, there's so many of those things to consider. But I do think if at the end of the day, we have a really clear picture of, like, if money was no object, if responsibilities was no object, what do I
Mm.
really want every day of mine to look like? And I think that really does help guide us closer to a decision, because I think there's no right decision, but it'll help guide us closer to a decision that feels right in that moment.
Yeah. Congrats to your dad. That's very
It is
exciting.
very exciting.
But that's the thing too I had to come to terms with is there is no I was like, "What's the right decision? I'm going to make the wrong one, or I'm nervous about making the wrong one," and there isn't one. Like, there isn't one, and I've been at it for, like, weeks thinking about it. There isn't a right or wrong, and I know that now. Um, and also too, none of it is forever. If it doesn't work, then change it, and that's sort of what a lot like you we hear all the time is if you don't like your life, change it, and that's the same thing goes for if you do make what you find out to be the wrong decision, it doesn't have to be forever, and you can make a change, and you can go back to the thing that maybe brought you more joy, or it's not I think too, not thinking of it as like a failure or a wrong choice. It's just like, "Oh, I figured it out now. Now I have the most clarity possible and can change my I can change my
Yeah.
decision." And I mean, I grew up in sort of mindset of absolutes of like, there's one way or there's another way and there's no other way. And then if you don't do it the right way, you know, then you're wrong. But I just think sort of breaking all of that down, it just doesn't really exist outside of your mind. So these are all things that I love talking about it actually now. This is great
And
thinking
you
about
took
it.
the thought, like, right out of my head too, that I think so many times we look at these decisions and the reason fear of failure, right? Because I think that's what it really is fear of failure of making the wrong choice or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Whether you start a business, leave a business, whatever. The reality is we are thinking it's a failure because we're thinking we're making a forever decision. And
Yeah.
I know you're also a mom, and for me, in the last couple of years, my youngest has had a slew of health problems and also just personality challenges. And she has, sent me through a whole new version of parenting that I had never prepared myself for. But it has been one of those things that I looked up and it almost forced me to realize nothing else in my life is a permanent decision, honestly, right? Like, I can choose to be married. I can choose not to be married. I can choose to live somewhere. I can choose not to live somewhere. I can choose to have a job. I can choose to have a business. I can choose to shut all of that down or change it. Parenting is the thing that, like, once I've made that choice, it's with me for the long haul. But that's helped me keep that
Yeah.
perspective too of like, when I look at what do I want my life to look like, I no longer want to treat motherhood as the second option for me or as what gets what's left of me. This is also hard, and I think it's worth mentioning. So many of us had really strong, fulfilling corporate careers. So while we left for whatever those
Mhm.
reasons may be, it doesn't mean that we hated every part of it or that we regret that we ever built that career or that we didn't enjoy so much of it, because there are so many times I miss having a big team and I miss going on bigger work trips because I was meeting other people for certain things and we were doing bigger things than I would do in my own kind of solopreneur journey. And it's okay to say, like, we miss those things too, and that it plays into the decisions that we're making.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just a mindset shift, but doesn't make it easier.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad we got to chat about this, Sarah, because I do genuinely think there's so many people out there who need to hear this. I do want to selfishly ask you about communities because
Would love
we've got something exciting going on in the Brave Start around community. And my first thought was like, I gotta hit Sarah up because I gotta make sure I don't screw this thing up. And so I know a lot of our audience is either in a community or has considered building one as part of their business model. What would you say to someone who's like, I'm thinking about getting involved with community? What are maybe some of the like top things that you would be like, this is what you really need to look out for? Or this is how you can use it as maybe if you are in decision paralysis about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. The major thing that I like to focus on first is really being clear on the why behind the build of your community. What are the goals? What do you want to bring? Who do you want to bring? And that'll start once you figure out that very clear why, it'll start answering a lot of the questions of okay, why? Then who's going to be there? Who's going to be my target member? Why are they there? What content or what value do I want to provide to them so that they'll stay for a long time? Where do I want to build it? So, all of those questions start to get answered a lot more easily when you have a clear idea of why you're doing it. And it shouldn't just be because it makes sense to do it. It should be a very clear reason. And then another thing too is thinking about where, say, so social media communities are awesome, right? It's a way to build an audience, but a lot of the shift is like, okay, I have this audience and I really want to engage in a different way, or maybe I want to monetize it, or maybe whatever the goal is. Making sure that you're not building it in a place that is inconvenient or doesn't quite fit with that target member. So I think a lot of people are guilty of it, but it's like, cool, I'm going to buy this brand new platform and I'm going to make it really awesome and it's going to be filled with all this sick content and people are going to just love to come. But if your target member is mom, for example, or really anybody, downloading a new app, getting them to come into that new app all the time is challenging. So like when you start to learn about your member and who you want to have, where are they now, where can you meet them now to make it a lot more convenient for them to engage in your community in
Mm.
different ways. Overarching is just you have to understand who it is you want and ask them what they want, right? So if a lot of the time some easy mistakes that some folks can make is I making assumptions of like, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be valuable. These are things that people want to hear from me about. And a lot of the times there's those intuitions can be correct, but there's nothing wrong with just asking and maybe doing some surveys or just chatting and getting to know your members in different
Oh,
ways.
yeah. Customer discovery all day long. I will always be a vote for that. We launched a beta version with people who are already in a paid program, and we asked them, like, do you want it in our client portal where you're already showing up weekly for, your sessions and where we're showing up already, or do you want it in Slack because that's what's already on your phone, that's where you're already. And so we opted to build it inside of our client portal because they're coming there weekly, and we wanted this kind of traction of like, when you are thinking about building your business, this
Love
is
it.
all of the place that you go for that. But we also left it up to them. We're not married to this. So if we get down the road 3 months and you decide, actually, I don't ever go in here because I can't figure it out, or it's an app I never look at, or whatever it may be, then it's like, okay, we can pivot. And I think
Yeah.
that's the other part too. Like, don't get yourself stuck in the why and all of that. Like, answer them with what you know. Make a choice with the best you have,
Yeah.
but also be open that you may have to change that as you get down the road.
Yeah, that's another thing when you mentioned, when you wanna get it right, I think there's a lot of pivoting, there's a lot of like, "Hey, let's try this and see if it sticks and if it doesn't work," and that's what's so cool about community is you can just be like, "Hey guys, this didn't work. We're gonna try something else, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about it." One of my early mentors said something like she was like, "Sarah, you let great get in the way of good, or you let perfect get in the way of really great." And that's always been something that I sort of keep in mind all the time because it doesn't have to be perfect. Community takes a lot of time and like there's no secret sauce.
In good typical tech fashion, Sarah and I ended up losing the back half of our recording, but we got the absolute best pieces of this. And if you're in the process of building community or you already have one, but it has felt a little bit like an uphill battle, I hope that you found some key tips in the information that Sarah shared. But I would be remiss to end this episode without actually telling you about our fun story of getting to know each other. So Sarah and I actually met inside of a working mom community based in the US. And as Sarah mentioned, she's in Canada. She and I get on a one-on-one call just to meet each other, start talking. And she says to me that she's in the Toronto area. And I said, "Oh, I'm so jealous. I have so many friends in the Toronto area. And I see them going to all these events together right now. And like one of my girlfriends runs another community for working moms there. And I want to go be able to hang out and go to these events with them too." And she says, "Well, tell me, what's your friend's name?" And I tell her, and she busts out laughing because my friend Laura Sinclair is Sarah's sister. We had no idea. So, of course, we had to take a picture. We had a good laugh. We sent it to Laura, but it has since gone on to be, I think, even an episode on Laura's podcast just around the power of networking and how much you really never know what doors you're opening when you just speak up about what you're doing and the impact you're making in this world. So, with that, I'm so glad that you were here today. I hope you feel the impact that you're making. And if you are stuck with something, if you've got this part of your business that you're like, I just keep spinning my wheels on it, I just can't get through it, and I am tired of banging my head against the wall, that is exactly why I host a monthly entrepreneur Q&A session. It's a free hour where we all come together and we just solve problems live, answer questions live. No sales pitch, no requirements from you. We meet on Google Meet and we just answer each other's questions, get them out of your head, and get you moving on to the next great thing that you've got going on for you, your life, your family, and your business. We have one that happens towards the middle of each month. So if I can get you an invite, don't hesitate to shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'm at Gabs Hayes, or you can go ahead and directly grab your spot at thebravestart.com.